Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Aimee Coonerty-Femiano, and I'm a psychologist here at Seattle U. I work in the Counseling Center, otherwise known as CAPS here, and I've been here since 2013. So I basically spend my day sitting with students, listening to their struggles about anxiety, depression, homesickness, relationship issues, academic stressors, and really any issues that they come in with. So today, I'm here to give you some guidelines of what to be thinking about as your student returns home for the first time for the holiday, and what might help you with the transition. So my title of the talk today is Home for the Holidays, What to Expect When Your Student Returns. And today for our webinar, actually we're not live today, so this is not as relevant, but skip this one over. So before I get into what you can expect when your student comes home, I also want to quickly review some of the themes that you might remember from Summer in Seattle if you went to the presentation there that many of you may have attended. Your student is in the emerging adulthood phase, which means they're in a time of feeling in between. So they're no longer an adolescent. They're starting to feel responsible for themselves. One minute they welcome adult responsibility, but then the next minute they just might feel like a child again who longs for that safety of childhood. So this is a hard time for them because they're not quite an independent adult and they're still very closely tied with you and their family, but they're also requiring education here at SU and have little pressure to be in those adult fixed roles yet. So basically it's a time for great possibility and lots of exciting opportunities. So here are some of the developmental tasks of this phase, which you see up on your screen. Identity exploration, and that means sort of in the context of separating from their family, changing residences, focusing on developing new friendship networks, pursuing who or what they want to be when they grow up. So basically, this is a time when your student is starting to consider who they are, what they value, what's important to them. So they might not consciously be realizing this, but they might be asking themselves kind of important questions like, what am I good at? What kind of person am I? Kind of work do I find satisfying? So these are important to keep in mind because they might be themes that you encounter as they enter back into your household. In terms of worldview, college students are exposed to a wide variety of worldviews here at SU. They may be questioning the values and beliefs that they brought with them to college. They may be identifying their own values and starting to assert what they believe. So this may result in some very heated discussions when they return home, since they may come back with new values that were different from when they left. Love and relationships is also a task of this period. Here at college, they may engage in a variety of romantic and sexual experiences, especially because there's decreased parental monitoring. So love can become more serious and more intimate, either emotionally, physically, or sexually, and relationships often last longer than they did in adolescence. So you may hear about this when they return home, or you may not, but even if you don't, it may be a focus for them at school. And the last one is about education and work. As you might remember from Summer in Seattle, college students often change majors more than once in their first couple of years, just to try on lots of different occupational futures. And this can be stressful for them and you, so it is important for you to normalize this if this is something you hear about when they come home. So they also might, here at college, seek some internship experiences or maybe even start thinking about graduate school. Basically, they might just start looking for work where they can kind of make a difference. So depending on how they did their first quarter at school, they may be anxious about their future, or they may be in the process of changing their mind, or they might be really excited, kind of depending on how that first quarter went. So another thing to keep in mind is these are some adult roles and responsibilities that they are growing into, which means they're not there yet. Once again, they don't see themselves as adolescents, but they don't see themselves entirely as adults because they have yet to adopt all of these roles, but they might be in the process. So identifying one's personal beliefs and values, as I said, this might have changed since last time you saw them. Making independent decisions, this is something they are doing here at SU, which as a result might bump into your rules when they're home over break, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Establishing financial independence from family is another adult role that they're growing into. They may be striving for this, but not there yet, which means having a conversation about finances may be very important to do over break. Establishing an equal relationship with their parents is another adult role and responsibility that they're growing into. And this may become much more apparent for you as you share space with them for the first time since they've been away from home and been establishing their independence. And then lastly, accepting responsibility for the consequences of one's actions, which is something they may or may not have kind of started to do here and at home. So what can you expect when they come home? So what happened this past quarter? Well, it could have been stressful for them academically or socially, or it might have just been a big adjustment for them, kind of managing their schedules, transitioning from a high school schedule to a college schedule, which is quite dramatically different. They might have done really well. They might have not done as well as they wanted to. They might have been involved in a lot of things or not at all. There just could have been a lot going on for them, a lot of moving parts. Another thing to expect when they come home is that holidays, you already know this, but holidays are stressful, so that's not news to you. However, remember that everyone may be feeling that normal stress of the holidays, and then in addition, everyone's now transitioning to readjusting. So please try to encourage everyone to have patience with each other, because not only are you in a stressful holiday time, but you're also transitioning to being back together for the first time. There might have been some change in your family, so I want you to remember that not only may your student changed, but the family dynamic may have changed. So what I mean by this is maybe you have been accustomed to differences at home. Maybe there have been fewer disruptions. Maybe your house is quieter. Maybe you don't have to share your car. Maybe you don't have to go grocery shopping as much. Siblings may have readjusted to their place in the family. Maybe a younger sibling is now moved to oldest child status. Or maybe your student room has been appropriated by a younger sibling, or maybe your student's room is now a workout room or a craft room. So don't forget that this change in family that you may not have been as aware of might become very apparent now. The other thing I want you to keep in mind is that this is a big adjustment for your student. They've been independent at school. They have not had to report to anyone. They've been free to sleep when they want, eat when they want, come and go, do what they want. So re-entering your routine may feel very restrictive, much more restrictive than it did when they left. So this might require some compromise on everybody's part. They may need to spend more time than usual catching up on sleep, which is why I put this picture here. Often when students come home for break, they just spend a couple days sleeping, which is totally normal. They may want to eat a lot of comfort food. And remember that your day may end at 10, but that may be when their day gets going. So this might be an adjustment for them to be in a house with those different routines. And just remember that home is a sanctuary place for them right now, and they may just need some downtime before they're ready to go out and be socializing for the holidays. And also, just as was saying about this as an adjustment time, it may be a difficult time for your student because they might feel like they no longer fit in anywhere. So they may not have yet fully adjusted to school. They don't yet feel completely grown up, yet they no longer feel as they can step back into their accustomed place in the family, nor do they want to. So, but in some ways they really might long for that nostalgia of their old family life, but they want to be an adult too, with independence. So they're kind of continually negotiating who they are, who they want to become. And for the time being, basically what that means is they might not be comfortable anywhere. So just remember that they're not necessarily pulling away from you or pulling away from the family. They may just be trying to find a new place in that family structure. Some other things you might expect when they come home: time with friends versus family comes up often. So your student's going to want to catch up with their hometown friends because they might be really anxious to tell them about their new life, to hear about theirs, and just spend some time reconnecting. So don't assume that your child is just going to hang out at home. Before they arrive, they may have already lined up visits with friends. Check in with them before they head home. And I'm going to bring this up again, but do check in with them to see what gatherings they already might have planned that you don't know about. And then ask maybe if they want their friends to come along to gatherings that you would like them to come to, because it can be a really challenging time for them to see everyone in a very limited time period. Household disruption is another thing you can expect. Once again, as I said, this is a new person under old rules. So, for example, when they're here at school after they're done eating, they put their tray on a conveyor belt and it disappears. So maybe they're not used to doing the dishes after they eat. As I said, their hours might not coincide with yours. They're used to coming and going and eating at very different times than you. So you might need to negotiate some sort of compromise and set some limits. Remember, they might eat dinner with you and then again at 2 a.m., which might create some disruption in your household. So you might need to create some new rules, which I'll once again come back to, or some new curfews, and sort of try to find that middle role for everyone. Stepping into a different world. So the student has just been here at school, busy with papers, projects, exams, their activities. They may not have even thought about the upcoming holiday or just put much thought into what it's like to come home. So they may need time to adjust and prepare. They may need to be reminded of family visits. Don't forget, they're stepping from one world into a very, very different one. Another theme that comes up a lot is a long distance relationship might end. And I just put it up here because it's actually quite common for this to happen during the first break. So I just wanted to make you all aware of it. Not having someone there, this may or may not be relevant for your student, but since they last left, maybe someone important to them might have passed away, or maybe there's some out-of-state family members that aren't there. So this might be hard for them. Boredom is not something I anticipate so much over Thanksgiving break because it's so short, but I put this on here because winter break is coming up and it's longer. And if they might encounter some boredom if they don't have a car or don't have a job, sort of depending on what they had planned. Value changes, as I said, this is something that they're experimenting with their identity, learning new things, so their values may be quite different. And then I put our final schedule up here, basically because I wanted to let you know that right when they come back from Thanksgiving break, they have about a week and then finals start. So it's a really quick transition. So they might want to study when they're home. If they're not studying when they're home, they might be stressed about the fact that when they come back, they have to study. So I just wanted you to know the schedule to let you know that this is a very, very quick turnaround for them. Some things you can do to ease the transition. Plan a time to talk. So once your student comes home, it might be a good idea to schedule some time with them and sort of actually like make an appointment almost for like an open discussion about potential issues that might come up when they're home. And this might be one of the most important things you do to kind of make that visit go smoothly, just to have even right when they get home, right in the beginning, an honest discussion about curfew, expectations, because these are things that the student might be worried about and you might be worried about. As I said, it's not reasonable to expect that your student who's been able to come and go now has to step back into their high school curfew. On the other hand, it may not be reasonable for your student to expect you to be comfortable not knowing where they are and what time they're coming and going. So basically just talk it out. Let them know maybe what your bottom line is, be ready to compromise, talk about your comfort level, let them talk about their expectations. And often people are surprised at how reasonable their student is when the issue is addressed very calmly before it becomes a problem, and also when you ask for their input as an adult. Don't forget to engage in rituals, traditions, maybe favorite meals. This may be very comforting for your student. And then once again, choose your battles. Remember this balance between independence and family responsibility. Just consider what's kind of really important to you and think about this readjustment period and kind of be patient. The other thing is when you're discussing things with them, this might be back to choose your battles too, you may also want to discuss any other issues that may be pending later. Like maybe over winter break, if some issues might be pending, like maybe they had some big plans, or do you need to actually kind of talk about grades later or money? So these are some things you might also want to plan to take advantage of. And then also get to know this new person that your student is becoming. The changes may be radical or they may be very, very slight, but basically this is an ideal time to learn about your student in a new way. And remember to look for and acknowledge any positive changes that you see, because that's important too. So here's some questions that you might want to ask in advance. Maybe, is there anything that you should know before they come home? Just sort of a generic question, just in case there's any big things they wanted to tell you. Let your student know if there are any changes they should expect when they come home. Once again, is the room a craft room? Things like that. You can ask what they're looking forward to regarding coming home. This may help you learn about their expectations and them think about theirs, what they're not looking forward to. Ask them what they think it might be like when they come home for the first time. And once again, is there anything you should know? And these questions can kind of help set the stage a little bit, so to make that transition once they get home a little bit smoother. Questions you can ask once they get there. You could just ask to tell them about your first quarter, sort of a pretty generic open-ended question. You can ask about their academics, or are they making friends like they hope they would? Have they had time to be involved in anything outside of classes? How's their mental, physical health? Always good to check in on. And you can ask them to tell you about any maybe accomplishments that they've done since they've been here, or big milestones, or maybe disappointments that they've had. So these are just a couple of ideas about things that you might want to ask them. Some things that you might hear about are academic demands. The quarter system moves pretty fast, so there's certain periods like midterms that can be kind of stressful. Also academic demands because they're adjusting from high school, which was very, very different. So this might be quite a change for them. It might be a little bit more challenging. You might hear about what it's like to be on one's own in this brand new environment. You may hear about relationship issues that come up, either new ones forming, old ones ending, financial concerns. As I said, this might be a big one. You might hear about exposure to new people, ideas, or temptations that your students experienced. Or you might hear about their awareness of their sexual identity and orientation. Or you might not hear about any of this. They may feel they want to keep that portion of their life a little bit close to the chest right now, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're hiding anything. But they may just not feel like that college routine is very noteworthy at this point. Or they might just want to be home and focus on being home and taking a break and not thinking about school. So that might be another reason that you might not hear about all of this. So what if they look different when they come home? So I chose to put some celebrity pictures up here because I thought that would be best, because I wasn't quite sure what all of your college students actually look like. So they could come home with blue hair, a large piercing, or no hair. Part of the reason that I said that question, ask them, you can ask them in advance, is if there's anything I should know. This could be something they could tell you before they come home. If they don't, and this is what you encounter when you pick them up, don't lead with what have you done. Don't lead with why is your hair blue. I wouldn't lead with what is that thing in your nose. Remember that I was talking about identity exploration as one of the developmental tasks of emerging adulthood. So this could just be part of that process for them. So just remember to kind of remain calm and don't react too much to it. Which also comes to mind what if they come home and they drop a bomb? Like, what if they come home and they say, oh, did I mention I wasn't coming home for winter break? Or, oh, I forgot to tell you I'm on academic probation. Or, oh, I think I'm going to drop out. First, I just want to get to that want to drop out part. Not wanting to come back to SU could just be a common part of their adjustment, which doesn't actually mean they want to leave. It just could mean they're feeling a little bit stressed. For a lot of students, that transition to college lasts for the year, not just a quarter. And the next quarter, you may hear a very different story. But whatever it is that they might say that shocks you, just remember to listen and don't react right away. And just let them share. Because remember, it's probably really hard for them to share this with you. So if you hold on to your judgments for a little bit and keep an open mind and just focus on them and really focus on your body language, because you don't want your body language to show that you're totally shocked if you're trying to remain calm. You can always ask for clarification. Don't make assumptions about what you're hearing. Validate what you hear. It might be nice for them just to have a little bit of validation that they're having a hard time, for example, if they're on academic probation. And then take time to respond. And then you can kind of ask them some processing questions or basically help students figure out what to do next. What if they come home and they say they're struggling and they're really, really stressed? Well, I would say this is a good sign that they're talking about it with you, and you're probably the really good person for them to talk to, because you can share some great ideas with them. Even though I know you've all encountered stress and you do have tips for it, I'm going to share with you some a little bit more specific for college students. So to let them know to expect it, because students who are prepared for the possibility that this wonderful college experience can actually be stressful sometimes won't be as shaken up by it when it happens. If you can help them name what it is, they might just have this generic overwhelmed feeling, but if you can help them actually identify what it is, that might be really helpful for them, because then they might be able to either tackle it or accept it, depending. I put accept it on there because if they can accept that stress might just be part of their college experience, it might just be helpful for them to kind of go with the flow during those stressful times as opposed to becoming paralyzed. And then going with the flow doesn't mean to not do anything about it. They can still obviously tackle it. And there are kind of specific ways that you can help them think about managing their stress. So here, once again, some specific ideas, a little bit more closely tied to college students, even though I know you all have great ideas also from your own experience. This work-health-life balance, I think it's something we all strive for. But to keep in mind with a college student, their high school life was more structured and easier to get that balance. Now they have a lot more choices in how to organize their time. They may only have classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They may only have classes in the morning. And so back in high school, they might have been exercising, sleeping on a regular schedule. You may have been cooking for them. And these things are really important, but now they might have not focused on them because they have all this other things going on. So really help them to think about or talk about, sleep is still important. You have to balance that. Healthy eating and exercise is still important. Are they involved in too many activities or maybe not enough? Are they trying to work too many hours? Are they taking too many credits? Just to help them talk this all out and help them find that balance with this new schedule. Encourage them to get support when they're here. Obviously, friends is a big one that they often use the most. But remember, there's a lot of other places here that they can get support. An academic advisor, a counselor, us here at CAPS, resident RAs. And remember that once they get to school, it's actually your student who has to seek out those resources at school and kind of solve their own problems. And encourage them to do that and get that support. And this can be a really big part of kind of becoming an adult and seeking out resources on their own. Getting organized, as I said, this is new for them, this schedule. So maybe talking to them about how to use a planner if they haven't done that in high school. Some students like to work in their room, which can be very small. And so that desk space, once it gets one thing's out of place, it can become very messy. So maybe encourage them to keep whatever that workspace is in a more organized fashion. Students often say that when they keep that workspace in their room clean, it's easier for them to do things. Finding quiet time, this may be relevant for your student or not, depends on what kind of student you have. But residence halls can be wonderfully social places to live, which are great. They're often continually pretty active and busy. So whether it's finding a few minutes to go take a walk or find some time to be quiet could be helpful. There's lots of quiet spaces all over campus. As you know, our campus is quite pretty, so it's a great place to walk around with quiet spaces. But the library has lots of small spaces to be quiet, and there are also chapels in many buildings throughout campus, which are often places that people go to just get a little quiet time. And then you can encourage them to kind of take a break from their routine, maybe get off campus, go on a hike with our OAR organization. It's nice for people to get off campus that way, or to go downtown. So that can often be nice for them, just a little change of pace. I know going to class is a weird suggestion if you're stressed, but a lot of students, when they're stressed, get overwhelmed and they might skip a couple classes, which can cause more stress because now they get behind. Encourage them to get involved. Once again, this is really student dependent, but some students do better when they are more involved in different activities, and there's a lot to do on campus. Communicate, I always come back to this, but just encourage them to communicate with people back here to get the help that they need. And you might be able to talk to them about some goals and some action steps they can take, which might make it a little bit more helpful for them once they get back to campus. And once again, even if you don't say any of these things, your listening skills may just be the most important thing you do. I don't know if you remember at Summer in Seattle, but a lot of students call you when they're most stressed, and they tell you everything that's going wrong, and then they get off the phone with you and they feel great, which might leave you feeling not great, but they feel great. So just having that open ear and having them be able to talk to you about this might be all you need to do. So as I said, once again, communication. You might remember this from Summer in Seattle. Just communicate with them about your expectations, academic expectations, finances. Communicate honestly about your concerns as they come home and your feelings and changes back home. So I'm talking about communicating, but now I'm going to share, Tim Wilson is also here, and he's going to share with you a story about communicating and how even if you communicate the greatest that you can, sometimes it still might not work out because sometimes you can still have a communication gap. So here's a story that Tim recorded for you. Um, so uh, hold on one second. We're just getting back to the presentation. Okay, sorry about that. We're now getting back to our presentation. So anyway, I hope you all enjoyed Tim's story. I love listening to it. I've heard it before and it makes me laugh every single time. So just remember, you can communicate all you want, and sometimes that may still happen. Hold on one second. We're just trying to figure out something real quick. All right, sorry about that. We are all back. And if you guys did not hear that video, we will try to, we're gonna try to record it again for you. So I'm sorry if you didn't hear that video, and we'll figure that out for you and have that available somewhere. So just to wrap up, I just want to remind you that your job is not over just because your child is already here. You still have a very significant role to play. When I was talking about those adult roles and responsibilities, how well your student makes that transition through young adulthood and becomes a fully independent person depends on a large part about that right balance of your student pushing for independence and parents and society giving that correct amount of support and not pushing too hard or holding back. And you are a very important source of wisdom and support as your student explores and examines all these life possibilities and goes through this period. And don't forget, these are, once again, you might have remembered this from Summer in Seattle, their brains are not fully developed till they're 25. So please keep that in mind as you are going through all these transitions. They are an emerging adult, so they're in that in-between stage. These adult responsibilities, they're working on them, but they're not quite there yet. So keep that in mind too. They might look like an adult and try to act like one, but they're not quite there. And just remember to enjoy every minute of your time with them at home. As you heard from Tim's story, they might not continue to come home for breaks. So please take advantage of the time you have. And I'm just going to talk briefly about the rest of the year, because even though we're talking about their first time home, I thought it would be good to talk a little bit about what you can expect coming up. So winter quarter is often a fresh start for a lot of students. It's great. For some students during the winter quarter, they get the winter blues, as we call them. So Seattle does have some rain. We have a bad reputation for rain. We don't have as much rain as a lot of other cities, but we do have more cloud cover. So some students from sunnier environments are not used to this. So they get a little bit more down in the winter. Cold and flu viruses also happen. Once again, your students are living in residence halls very close to lots of people, so these often spread. So please encourage your student to take care of their health. Illness can really throw them off academically. So if they are sick and they do get sick and you do hear about it, please remind them to check in with their professors, go to the health center, and just take care of themselves. Homesickness might return, which you might think is strange. They might have been homesick in September or October and now be great. But once they're home for winter break, they're home for a little while, they get used to it, come back, they might get homesick one more time. So keep that in mind as winter quarter goes. And now spring quarter, the weather's much better. There are a lot of outdoor fun gatherings here. The minute it turns like 50, students are wearing t-shirts and flip-flops. They're so excited. So keep that in mind for spring. Sometimes if they're feeling down and their mood doesn't change once the spring hits, that might be a good time for them to come check in with us over at CAPS. And then for the rest of the year, before going home for the summer, they might have some anxiety about their finals. They may be stressed over moving. They might have some apprehension about returning home, and they might be sad about leaving these new friends and or love relationships here at school. And then I also just want to remind you, I put this slide up, home sweet home, that you are their first home and you are their home sweet home. However, if at the end of break they say to you, I'm really excited to go home, and you're confused because they're home, what that means is SU is now their second home, which is a great sign. So please don't take offense if they call SU their home. It means now they have 2 homes, but you'll always be their first home. So I just wanted to say, once again, there is a recording of this webinar, so you can go check it out, and there will be more webinars to come, and Tim will tell you about those real quick.
So thanks, Aimee, and thanks everyone for viewing this rebroadcast. We are looking to have at least 2 more webinars coming up in the year. So next quarter, around the Martin Luther King holiday, we will have a webinar that's focused on financial aid, how to manage that situation, maybe some things that you can acquire, some knowledge you can acquire to understand the system. And that's going to be facilitated by our Student Financial Services Office. More than likely, our Director of Student Financial Services, Jeff Schofield, will be the one to facilitate that. And in the spring, we've got some options. We're looking at either having something with our Career Services Office and or having something with our Education Abroad Office for those students and their families who are maybe thinking about going abroad. It's a great way to understand more of what the world is like. And there's some things that families need to be aware of so they can help support their student in that decision-making process. So look for those webinars to be coming up as well.
Great, thanks. And I do want to let you know that the rest of the slides in this PowerPoint, which I will just click to now, these are some resources that you can check out. I actually have 4 slides of some different books that you might want to read. They have different things, either about just the college years or more specific titles. So feel free to check those out too. So thank you so much for attending our re-recording of our webinar today. And I hope you have a great break at home with your student.